So what's everybody? If you're wondering what's going on there, people watching YouTube, it's a certain fella's birthday tomorrow and we are celebrating. We are not going to discuss his age. He is old enough to know better. So last week we talked about how we might react when our tank runs dry. We are mentally, physically, or even spiritually drained. We feel empty, spent, or even forgotten. When this happens, we go through all the negative feels for sure. We even saw when Jesus was arrested, the reaction of the disciples was to bolt, most likely in absolute fear for their lives. As the disciples ran for cover, they did what everyone in a horror movie does when the killer is after them. First they run, then they hide. Unlike those horror movies where the victim is doing those things, you are yelling at the screen for them to stop, like stop freaking talking. Stay quiet when you're hiding. I get you just ran a mile and a half full blast, but why are you breathing like a heavy smoker climbing a giant hill? You're supposed to be hiding. The disciples weren't going to be victims. They found a good spot and they weren't about to come out. Their tank's absolutely empty. So they stayed hidden. While they are hiding, Jesus goes on trial. He is found guilty, tortured, mocked, and crucified to death. He is buried in a tomb with a huge boulder rolled in front of it and Roman guards making sure if someone had any fumes left in the tank to do something, they would be properly dealt with a quick and probably painful death themselves. But then Sunday comes. Now, I want you to act like you don't know the whole story here. Put yourself in the disciples' shoes. Empty tank, full of fear, hiding from the inevitable doom of being found. You got it? Then this information comes back to you, which you can find in Luke 24, 1 through 3. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. Does this do anything to energize you? Put a bit of pep in your step? Probably not. This is like the worst thing ever. This is the killer in those horror movies and what they do in those horror movies. And you're hiding in a spot. You think you're away. The killer walks into the same room and you fart. And not a silent one. Sorry, honey. My wife hates that word more than Jesus hates sin. But you break one off. And it's not a silent one. But oh, was it ever so deadly. The body of Jesus was stolen. Was it a trap? This is that moment when you think you might have enough to go one more step and then your leg cramps up and you just buckle and fall. You just have nothing left in you to take one more step. They had to be thinking, Jesus, the God who could do anything, couldn't stop from being arrested or tortured. The God who couldn't die, died. But gods don't die, right? And now the body of I'm not even sure who he really was, is missing. Who stole him? The Romans? A thief to make money off of Jesus' body? Was the guy who called himself God just some guy who duped us. And now because we followed him, we basically put ourselves next in line for the chopping block. This is rock bottom of emptiness we feel when we think all is lost. Then we finish the passage in verses 4 through 6. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still alive with you in Galilee?" When you hear this, does this give you a boost? I mean, is this the paddle to the chest and clear? Boom! Right? No more flatline. It's a full-on heartbeat rhythm. It's the boost to at least a couple of the disciples to get out of their hiding spot and run to the tomb and check it out. Even with the emptiness they had enough to check out what was happening. When I hear this, I get the visual of a little kid who you just gave a pixie stick or two to. They gobble them down, and about 5 minutes later, the sugar kicks in, and they get the kid version of the Zoomies. Or maybe that third cup of coffee has you out of the coma and back to the term paper that was exhausting you for so long. What changed? Jesus, the one they thought was God, was still dead, they thought. The tomb still missing his body. Why this jolt of energy? And in the verses, the secondhand story of the empty tomb comes from women. I mean, no disrespect, ladies. Not a source that the men at the time seemed to have a lot of respect for. If they were not married to them anyway, and sometimes even then. Even though the 2 people who told the ladies were glowing, what gives this spark to check it out for me? It's only one thing. Hope. Think about it when you don't think you have any shot of getting something accomplished. Anything. Or even overcoming an obstacle. How do you feel in this moment? Then something changes. So you're saying there's a chance. That's what you want may be in your grasp. The game you thought was over, and suddenly you score and you're only down 1 with lots of time left. The class you thought you were flunking, but a good quiz grade and some extra credit comes your way, and even that person you thought was done with you sits beside you and starts a conversation with you. The sugar is kicking in. Because there is hope in those situations. You're not in as much of a doom and gloom thinking about these things anymore. Because now you have hope in the situations. So, fuel tanks in those witnessing that the tomb was empty, being told what was those glowing dudes had said about Jesus being alive, and just to say this, those glowing dudes, you know they were angels, right, my friends? So why is there always, but there's something next, and why is there always a big old but? But the disciples that remained hidden weren't witnesses to the comeback of all comebacks. Their tanks are still dry. And nothing the guys with the full tanks could say would put a pep in their step. Jesus, though, he isn't about to let these guys waste away or get stranded on the side of the road. Jesus takes the gas station to them and gives them a full service fill up. And for those of you who do not know what that is, that's when the gas station attendant would put in your gas for you, check your oil, and even put air in your tires, clean your windshield, and you didn't even have to get out of the car for no extra money. Even the biggest doubter of them all, Thomas, who got first-hand help filling his tank by Jesus, proclaims when he sticks his finger into Jesus' hand, Jesus is Lord. Tank full already for a long trip now. If you read Colossians 3, 1 through 4, it says this. Since then you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. The disciples live out their remaining years living their life for Jesus by telling the world exactly who he is. Notice, I did not say was. God and Jesus is and always will be. But another but here, but this is a good one. The disciples do not exit that tiny room without the love of Jesus. Goes to where the disciples were. If Jesus doesn't go there, they don't leave that hiding spot. And Jesus poured out all of his love to him. So guys, listen to this. When Jesus pours out his love, it does not come out like an eyedropper would. Little bitty drops of love here, a little bitty drop of love there. His love is more like the current of a mighty river that sweeps the people who follow him away with him and in him. Here is the cool part. Jesus gives you this love and sweeps you away, but he doesn't leave you. He remains with you. You're kind of tubing with Jesus. And the cool thing is, Jesus is walking while you're tubing. Now, that's a cool thought. Tubing with Jesus. In Ephesians 4, 22 through 23, it says this. You were taught, with regard to your former way of life, to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds. I like this verse because it makes me kind of look back at how I used to be and who I used to be. How my life, knowing it or not, was leading me to an out-of-fuel way of living. I had no real hope of getting anywhere. Well, any good locations anyway. But, another good but here, Jesus came into my life, and like a wellspring, he filled me up with his love. And even though his current in my life is strong, all that water dripping off of me, I give to you. Because this is no ordinary water. It is actually the fuel of hope and love of Jesus that will fill your tank. Give you that sugar rush, that caffeine jolt to live for eternity with Jesus.